Welcome to Learning with Lerner, where we embark on a transformative journey of knowledge and personal growth. I'm Lindsay Lerner, your dedicated host and guide as we delve into the depths of unconventional wisdom. Together, we'll explore the stories and insights of remarkable trailblazers who have forged their own paths. Brace yourselves for thought-provoking conversations, profound insights, and eye-opening experiences. Our mission is to challenge the norm, ignite curiosity, and empower you to embrace your unique journey. This is Learning with Lerner. Welcome to Learning with Lerner. On today's episode, we have a true expert in the realm of live production. Meet Luke Meek, a seasoned front-of-house audio engineer and production manager. With over 15 years of touring experience, Luke has graced stages in all 50 states and over 35 countries. From coordinating NFL halftime performances to captivating audiences in iconic venues like Radio City Music Hall, Luke's expertise truly knows no bounds. He's also a published author and blogger, sharing insights on efficiency and professionalism in the industry. And when he's not on tour or writing, Luke takes flight as a private pilot. Get ready for an awe-inspiring episode as we explore the world of live production with the incredible Luke Meek. Welcome, Luke. Thank you so much for making the time to be here.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
As we embark on this hopefully enlightening conversation, let's begin.
Enlightening, absolutely.
Let's begin with your roots.
Let's enlighten.
Right. Can you take us back to where you grew up?
Yeah, born and raised in Iowa. I was there for the first 20 years of my life or so. And then I went to audio school in Minneapolis. And then I was back in Iowa for a chunk of years. Bounced around a bit. After Iowa, I went to Denver, and Denver, I went back to Iowa, and that's when I started touring with the band for the first time. And then LA for 12 years, LA to now Nashville.
So all these pretty big,
super brief,
pretty big music cities.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, especially where I went to audio school in Minneapolis, I mean, what an amazing place for music, the kind of the heart of the Midwest stuff. So it was a great place to be for what I was going to school for. And, everything I've done in my career, my life, all stems from the Midwest, born and raised in Iowa and Minnesota and stuff. So it doesn't seem, especially Iowa, it doesn't seem like the place you'd get a start in this kind of a career, but it worked.
Totally. Well, I mean, Minneapolis, I don't know if all of our listeners know how embedded music, especially live music, is in Minneapolis, if you want to shed a little light on that. Yeah,
that's a good point. I mean, I guess, being from the Midwest and so close, it just seems natural to me. But obviously there's Prince, and he kind of shed a bigger light on it. But there's tons of bands from there. A lot of funk stuff, especially like Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis stuff, who produced a bunch of Janet Jackson stuff. All the Prince, the whole Prince side of things, like Prince and the Time. But there's a lot of other stuff too, Soul Asylum's from there. I think Husker Du, I think they're from there even. So a huge music scene to this day. I mean, Nashville, for example, is one of those places where you can go, like they always say, you go to any bar, any night of the week, and there's just amazing studio musicians there just killing it. And Minneapolis is kind of the same way with that funk scene. I mean, and they're just amazing players, just go see, I wish I could remember some of the names of some of the bands. There's just funk bands from Minneapolis that have been around forever, and the players kind of come and go based off who's on tour and who's not and who's in town and whatever. But, amazing people like, Michael Bland, who's an amazing drummer. He's played with Prince, and that's just one example of them. So many. And, I have some good friends that are touring guys now that are from that scene. And it's pretty legendary.
Were you in bands growing up, or did you always want to be behind the scenes? What was the energy there?
Funny thing, I do not play an instrument at all. I took a little music stuff when I was in middle school and stuff.
Sure.
I played trumpet for a few years, and then that didn't really come in anything. And then that's honestly it. To answer your question, I always, behind the scenes was it for me, because I really got in. I was a huge music fan as a kid, which I think a lot of people are, but I really loved it. And so when I was going to community college after high school, I was like, well, I got to figure out what I'm going to do pretty soon. And so I was just brainstorming, like, what can I do that doesn't involve a cubicle and a 9 to 5 job? And I was like, well, I love music. Maybe I could work in a recording studio. And so that's how I kind of got the idea of getting into audio and the entertainment side of things. But honestly, my studies were primarily recording studio based, with like each semester had like one live sound related class. And then I got out of audio school and went back to Iowa for a while. And it's like, well, there was a lot more venues, live music venues than recording studios. So I kind of by default made the transition because I just wanted to do something in audio. And so that's how I started working in clubs and stuff. But yeah, to answer your question, I never played anything really. I'm not a musician. I don't consider myself very, very creative in that side of the world. So it was my way to be around entertainment without being a musician myself. And honestly, it's not my world. Like I don't know. I'm not super good in front of a bunch of people. So the idea of getting on stage and doing that is like, ooh. So behind the scenes is good for me.
Yeah, no, that resonates. That definitely resonates. I get that. And so when you were in school, was there any like career path? Was there anyone pushing you in a certain direction saying, hey, test this out, test that out? Or did you say, screw it, and that's where you made the jump to go to LA?
Honestly, in audio, like when I was in school, there wasn't, the teachers would kind of like guide you a little bit and say, oh, you should try this or that. But my school specifically didn't have much of a like placement program at all. So it's kind of on your own. And the teachers definitely promoted a lot the idea of like the hustle and like the, internship and that kind of stuff. But everything was on my own. I mean, school never did any kind of placement or help there, which is, like I said, that's kind of why I started working in studios. I did a couple like internships in studios and stuff, but it was hard because my hometown specifically didn't have much for studios. There was one there, and I did go there a little bit. But again, I think like it wasn't intriguing enough to me. And then so I didn't really work that hard at the studio stuff. And then once I got a job, an actual job that paid me, not very much, but paid me to be a front of house audio guy in this small, like 400 cap club, then I was like, oh, this is fun. And I think I didn't realize at the time, but I've learned since then of like, I like the instant gratification of live sound as well over a studio. Like studio, you might do the same 4 bars of a song 100 times so you get it right. And like live sound is like fix it, change it, do what you got to do, move on, next song, next show, next day, next city, like all that. And I like the instant gratification of like the hustle.
Oh, totally. Oh, I love that. I've never thought about it like that.
Yeah, that's definitely that's it for me. Is like you're not dwelling on anything too long. You go.
Oh, totally. And so what was that like going from, this 400 cap venue in Iowa to, now you've been 35 different countries, every damn state, all of these diverse, cultural landscapes. How has that influenced your approach over the years?
Man, again, like I take it all back to the Midwest and like that small, like that's so much of in the heart of me and what I am. It's like, I come from a small town. I come from a small club, but everything stems from there. The first band I ever toured with, I met because they would come through that club, and I became friends with those guys over the years. And then when I had been living in Denver for a while, it's like I was getting that itch to get out and travel more. And I told them, like I think I'm going to start touring or something. And then they were like, well, we need somebody, so you want to come with us? That was a small town, small clubs, everything I have. That's been the jumping off point for everything, including my desire to tour and travel and see the world. Because when you come up in a town of 25,000 people, no disrespect to it because it's where I'm from, but I needed more. I wanted to see more, and it just, I love where I'm from, but I also love getting out and seeing culture and all that too. So in a way, that inspired me to tour just as much as the big cities. And then once I got out to the big cities, more and more, or just travel in general, it's just like, oh, there's so much to see. And then once you start seeing stuff, you're like, oh, I want to see more.
Yeah. And what was it like with that first band? And for obviously you and I met because of the music industry. We both have backgrounds in the music industry and touring. And so I'm very intimately familiar with all the triumphs and tragedies of being on the road. But for listeners who may not know, if you could shed a little bit of light on, what it was like with that first band that you hit the road with.
Yeah, from day one, it was amazing. And actually, let's connect those dots too, because we met through our mutual friend Jason Walsmith, who was in the Nadas, who was the first band that I ever toured with. So that's how that all circles back. But yeah, I mean, literally from day one, I get on the road. It's like, oh yeah, this is what's up. Because when I lived in Denver, I was doing live production stuff full time, but it was more like corporate events and stuff like that. And which was great at the time, but I really just wanted to be around music. I didn't want to be around big keynote speaking events and stuff. I wanted to be around music and just mix bands all the time. So that was a big part of it for me. It's like, finally, I'm doing live shows and live music. And then, yeah, I mean, right from the get-go, when I moved back to Iowa to work with the Nadas, they were just putting out a new album. So we were on they were on a new touring cycle, new album cycle. So we went within the first couple of months I started working with them. We hit both coasts. And, at that point I had traveled a little bit, but not that much. I mean, I was seeing most of everything that they took me to for the first time in my life. And I was like, yes, this is what I've been waiting for. This is what I went to school for. This is my time, and finally let's do this. And I, back then, especially I was young, I had no ties. I was like, let's just go. Like, let's go for 6 months. I don't care,
Yeah, totally.
So it was amazing. And it definitely, that continued to set the tone and the pace for everything else I did for the next decade for sure. But, up to this point still, again, like it all, there's foundations, back, I think we don't realize, but a lot of, early in our careers, in our lives, you're so much setting the foundation for what's to come. And you don't realize at the time, you're just doing what you can to hustle and have a good time. But yeah, so much stuff stems from those times in my life. And it definitely, like, once I got out of town, out of the state, out of the country, every time those milestones hit, I was like, yeah, this is awesome. Let's do more of this. I really loved it.
Could you explain a little bit about those differences? I know you mentioned it between, you have this skill set of being in live production, which means you can set up every single audiovisual need that you could ever imagine having. But the difference, to your point earlier, of setting that up for a corporate keynote speaker in an office versus using that same skill set for something that you're passionate about, which is live music. And typically one pays a little bit more than the other as well. So how did you balance that over the years?
Yeah, I mean, again, like it's such a different world, but I learned so much during those few years I was in Denver doing corporate stuff. I mean, I learned a lot about audio, but because this was a full, the production company I worked for was a full, they did everything: lighting, audio, video, backline, power. I mean, sometimes I would do gigs where I was just like at some like city festival, and we were just the power provider. And so I learned so much about that. And so, at the end of the day, production's production, of course. So I think the difference being in the corporate world, it would be like, not only does it have to look real nice and sound real nice, but it's like visually, like it has to look good visually, meaning not like the lighting and sound, but like it has to all be black drape and like you have to dress real nice and these kind of things, and but it's very cool. I mean, there's so much to be learned from every aspect of it. And, and then from there you can cherry pick what applies to the live music industry and get rid of what doesn't. And, maybe bring some things that most people don't bring to the live music industry, bring some of those things you like the visual and like the visual aspects of making it look nice, make your stage look nice, whatever
Sure.
it may be,
The professionalism.
And yeah, exactly the professionalism, because the rock and roll world is much, it's a lot more carefree and
Right.
whatever. And in the corporate world, you have to be more professional because it's definitely more of a client thing, where in the rock and roll world and the production, music and pop music, it's just like, it's all just road guys and road people, I should say, because there's all genders at this point. But yeah, so it's like, I definitely personally, I brought a lot of that, learned a lot, and brought a lot of that professionalism over to what I do on the touring side as well, for sure.
That's super interesting. I'm also curious about, Production in general is always something, and we talked about it earlier, that's behind the scenes. And people, at least in my experience, don't tend to notice unless it's not good. So if you're doing a good job, whether it's at a corporate gig or you're on the road doing front of house for a live band, literally no one knows you exist unless shit hits the fan. So for you, how have you balanced that feeling of, feeling like you've done a good job, feeling like you're doing the right thing, and staying motivated to do this for all these years when, at least in my experience, credit is usually not ever given?
Mm-hmm. It's hit and miss for sure. Because you're right. If you're doing things right, it doesn't get noticed. So, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think I go into it. We're coming back to our roots a lot more than I expected today. But like, again, I go back to like, I'm from Iowa. That whole Midwest work ethic is really a thing. And so to me, it's always been about like, as long as I go in and I know that I've done the best that I can and I've done a good job, I don't, no, this is our job. This is what we do. I don't necessarily need a pat on the back. It is good once in a while. You do need a little affirmation that what you're doing is good and appreciated. But me personally, I don't need much of that. Like, to me, it's like, for example, if you're touring with a band and they hire you back for the next tour, that's your affirmation of like, you did good. That's why we're bringing you back. Because if you didn't do good, you wouldn't be here. So I think that that's part of it right there. Right. So that's helpful. But I think, and honestly, yeah, over the years, because depending on the artist you're working with or that, it might be like they don't say very much, so you don't know if you're doing good or how they're feeling about it. And or even your crew, like if you're a tour manager or a production manager, you don't really know. Like me personally, I'm like, I don't really know like what these people think of me. Do they think I'm doing good? Do they think I'm okay? Do they think I'm just barely cutting it? You don't really know. And then so that is, you have to have some self-esteem to just trust yourself, which I'm human. I struggle with that sometimes for sure. Of like, man, I think I'm just barely cutting it right now. But then something random will happen and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess I can do this. Okay. Or like somebody will say something, even in passing, that kind of reaffirms like you're doing a good job without them saying you're doing a good job, So but yeah, you got to have a little bit of a thick skin and you kind of got to go in knowing that like, I'm going to do this. And you might, other than a paycheck, you might not get much of a thanks, but like, if that's what you're here for, probably in the wrong industry.
Totally. Totally. Oh, man. And at what point, I know at some point along the way, you've done production for not only corporate, obviously live music, but also the NFL, some halftime shows.
Yeah, I've done a boatload of television stuff. Well, I should preface it saying all the television stuff I've done has been on the artist side, like coming in with an artist. I've never worked, like, even though I lived in LA, I didn't do television or anything like that while I was there. So any of the television stuff has been like, with the band coming into like Fallon or whatever, doing a performance that night. So I've done a lot of that. So that's all, whatever band I'm working for, it's all how hot they are at the moment and if they get gigs on shows, so I do a lot of that over the years. The NFL stuff, same thing. I work with these friends of mine who for a while they did a couple halftime, like NFL halftime shows, not like Super Bowl-y, obviously stuff, but like season, regular season stuff. And they just had a couple gigs. And so I did, because, that's definitely more of a production manager, production coordination thing. I'm not mixing that audio. They have the stadiums and the teams have they have their own teams. So I would just come in and production coordinate the overall thing, making sure the band had what they need and the team and the production side had what they need. So very cool. And at that point in my career, I was like, yeah, just like give me something different. I don't want to like something different than just a club show, Very fun.
Sure. Any particular behind the scenes story or stories that might showcase some of those challenges that you faced and the creative solutions that you've been able to devise? Because I think that's another thing that very much gets overlooked from the production perspective is that, again, when things go right, nobody has any idea what is going on. And behind the scenes, whether it's the tour manager, front of house, whoever it is, who's putting out all the fires to make it so everything comes out flawless. So any of those stories I would love to hear.
So last summer, I was going overseas with an artist that I still work with. And right before we were supposed to go, I got COVID for the first time. And I was like, it wasn't just like, I tested positive, I should go. It was like, man, I was down for the count. Like, I'm not leaving that couch, let alone the house, let alone the country, because we were leaving the country. So the rest of the band and crew went over there. I came over a few days later in time for the first show. But then the night before the first gig, which was a festival in Belgium, my cargo person calls me up and says, "Hey, your gear's still in Minneapolis." And so I was like, cool. That was an insane fire to put out because I was still kind of feeling groggy from COVID. But like, so we rent some stuff, like primarily drums and some keyboards, but everything else we were flying with. So like all our microphones, most of our backline, our playback rig, except for the laptops themselves, like I had like 12 hours, and it was an insane 12 hours. So that, again, there's a million intricacies of how it all went down. But the long story short was like, okay, first of all, tell the promoter, like, our stuff's not here. We might not be able to do a show. But then they're awesome and want the show to happen too. So they're like, cool, what do we need? What can we do? So they like helped us source a bunch of backline. They helped us source the stuff that we normally carry. I talked to every band member and every backline tech and said, okay, what do you need that we don't have now? Made a list of and tried to get what we could from the promoter, found out a music store and went and just started buying cables and like interfaces and all kinds of stuff. And then pieced it together and the show happened and it was insane. And then about the time we started our show, the stuff showed up. So we didn't get to use it because it was on the dock while we were doing our show. It was just loading in. But I mean, the fact that it got from Minneapolis to Belgium in 12 hours was pretty great. We got it and we had it for the rest of the shows. But that was definitely like, no. Like, when I heard that news, it's like, no, like this, why me? Like I just got COVID and that messed me up and I was down for the count. And then like our entire show was just derailed.
Right.
I was literally thinking like, this might not happen. We might not be able to perform.
Damn, that's so brutal.
With the right people and the right team and that's a good thing too, is like, man, the crew you work with and tour with is make or break. Because they could have all complained and threw a fit and no one did. And they just worked their butt off to like help me and the tour manager like nail it. And they did. And also like in the band being willing to roll with it, knowing like at the end of the day, we'll do a show, but it's not going to be perfect, and like, like the guitar player's like, just give me a mute pedal and a tuner and like, we'll figure it out, as opposed to, and some guys would just throw a fit and be like, it has to be everything I normally have, or it's not going to happen. It's like, you have to have people that are willing to roll with it in those situations. But that was a gnarly fire to put out.
Yeah, that's brutal. I mean, that's something too that relates, I think, to the professionalism of the industry. Like when you're touring at that caliber and you're on this world tour and it's, you're funded, you're backed, you're doing the thing, and you have like you said, like if you had a guitar player who was that much of a diva who wouldn't perform without brutal. X, Y, and Z, I mean, that's insane. And I think it's also a testament to the amount of work, the time, the money, the effort that goes into being a musician of that caliber as well, to be able to truly, like you said, roll with those punches. Because a lot of folks, like, they can only do what they know how to do under certain circumstances. And I would argue that the most professional people that are in the industry are the ones who were like, if they had no gear, they still would have figured out how to put on a show.
Yeah, I agree. I like to think that that's the case. It's like the bells and whistles are cool, but can you do it when like shit hits a fan and you don't have what you normally have? Could you still perform? And these guys did an amazing job. And that's helpful. And to your point, that's also like a bigger aspect of the industry and kind of why I'm so big on professionalism is just like, yeah, like you can be a diva or throw a fit or not support your tour and production managers when they're under extreme pressure and then shit really hits the fan. Or you could be difficult, or you can be like, this isn't their fault. And me throwing a fit and needing some, whatever, needing to do it my way or complaining because it's not perfect is not going to do anyone any good. So when you have a good crew that understands it and they're just proud and like, okay, this is a situation nobody wants to be in, but we're in it. So how do we make the best of it? So again, that's why I'm such a big advocate of professionalism in the industry now, because it's like that makes or breaks the whole thing. It can just be pleasant or you can be unpleasant. And we're always going to find ourselves in situations we don't want to be in, whether it's, something simple like raining at loadout, or the fact that your gear is halfway around the world and you need it now. They're all fires to put out. Some of them are just worse than others. And it's like, even something as simple as rain at loadout. Yeah, that sucks. I don't want to deal with it, but we're not changing Mother Nature. So let's figure it out and just do it, because we can stand here and whine about it, or we can just get it over with and then go take a hot shower and be happy,
Your newly published book, The Efficient Hustle, emphasizes professionalism and efficiency, obviously, both of which we've spoken about in the industry. Could you highlight a specific principle or mindset from the book that aspiring tour managers or production managers can really adopt to set themselves apart from their peers?
Cool. Well, yeah, I mean, I think you said it. It's, I guess our conversation's leading right into it is first and foremost the professionalism of it all. And what I say in the book is like, you don't have to be a seasoned veteran to be a professional. It's all about how you carry yourself. Like, you could be a brand new tour or production manager, and if you carry yourself well in general, but also when things get gnarly, you don't freak out and you just like keep a cool head. You don't have to be a seasoned veteran to do that. You just have to like keep a good demeanor. And again, like that spreads. And if you're the leader, whether you're a tour or production manager, you're leading a crew, you're leading a group of people, the professionalism sets the tone for the day. And like, are you going to walk in and are the local crew and are they going to appreciate you when you walk out at the end of the day or not? And so like, I'm again, kind of, going back to a few things in this conversation of it's like professionalism is such a big deal, even in the rock and roll world, even in the, the live industry. And then of course, efficiency, which I think lends itself to professionalism. A lot of the stuff I talk about in the book is efficiency in all aspects, like
Totally.
simply sending an advance email, like make it short and sweet, like efficient. Like no one, if someone opens an email that's long as a book, they're going to be like, no, like I don't have that kind of time.
Right.
But if they open up, it's like neat and clean, bullet points, get your point across. It's going to make your life easier because they're going to see it and actually respond to it. And then you can go on with your day. And so efficiency comes in a million different ways, whether it's how each of us manage our time throughout the day, developing consistencies in our workflow, consistencies in our day-to-day schedule. So, some things are almost muscle memory and you don't even have to think about it. So we can get the job done quicker and everyone has more time to eat lunch. But also you can step outside and get some fresh air and make a phone call and call home or go get good coffee or whatever.
Could you kind of paint the picture a little bit in essentially, day in the life of whether you're production managing, front of house, TMing, a culmination of all of the above, what that looks like? You pull up to a venue at what time, you're on a bus, and then everyone, basically you open your eyes and then everyone is just asking you a million questions.
Yeah. So that all varies. Obviously, it can vary significantly depending on the type of tour you're on. I kind of put the basis of it in a lot of the stories in my book, or, I focus it on like band in a van, like a 15 passenger van pulling a trailer up to kind of like a bus in a trailer kind of tour. So, you figure those tours show up at, if you're in a van, you're driving in the morning. So you might show up at noon or 1 and start loading in right away. If you're on a bus, you'll drive overnight and wake up at the venue and, still probably load in sometime between 11 and 1. And then you're kind of off and running for the day. You load in, you set up, regardless of what your position is. You're helping on some level. Even, the merch person might drop all their stuff and go get coffee and come back, but everyone's kind of working. So, you figure 11 to 1, somewhere in that ballpark, you're starting your day and load in, set up. By the time you're feeling good, doors open, crowd comes in, show done by 10:30-ish, and then reverse order, load it out, and load a trailer full of gear. In general, you're 12-hour days for sure. And if you're abandoning a van, you're add 4 to 6 to 8 hours of driving on there. Like I've been in a van at all times of day and night, and all weather and temperatures, freezing, bouncing around some bumpy road.
For sure.
You don't sleep well, and then you get into a bus and you sleep better maybe, but like that comes with its own thing too. So I guess to answer your initial question, yeah, it's like regardless of what your position is, you're working probably a 12-hour day. And then the only difference, if you're a tour production manager, your workload is significantly heavier and there's not really a minute off. Even days. I always say when you're a TM or a PM, you don't have days off. There's just show days and non-show days, because a day off is in a hotel or a coffee shop or something with probably a good 6 to 8 hours of work. And that's not even, even if you're a pro and efficient, like the workload is just there. Even in a small tour, like there's a lot of work to get even 5 people in a van around the country. It's a lot. So long days for sure. Now if you're lucky and maybe you're just a backline guy or something, your days off are your days off and you can go explore the city and stuff. So that's where it varies more for sure.
Especially even from a concert goer perspective, I would argue most folks have no idea what is happening before that musician hits the stage, especially like if it's an opener and you just drove 8 hours, you got there, you loaded in all of your stuff, you hit the stage, you're performing, you're like, you're 10 out of 10 of adrenaline. And then post show, it's like, what the hell just happened? I woke up at 6 a.m. in a city that was 8 hours away and now I'm here. And, so when people are, especially when it comes to like merch sales and everything else, it's just so important to support whether it's openers or just acts in general, because there's so many intricacies, to your point, that go into touring, all of the equipment, all of the production, all of the crew, all of the expenses. And, it's brutal.
You're right. And most people don't know or understand that. And that's cool because, you don't want them to see behind the curtain, right? Like I just want them to come and enjoy and be like, that was amazing, walk out, but it's cool to know. And it's cool to be recognized, of course, it's because there is a lot, and a lot of people, where they might not know and they might have no interest in the industry, but they want to know because it's cool. It's, let's be honest, for most people, it's pretty foreign, like you said. And so honestly, that's part of what was the point of my book is like, I initially wrote the book as a kind of how-to for young tour production managers, like either aspiring or, maybe they're doing it, they've been doing it for a little while, they want to take the next step and get better and be more pro and more efficient. But I also wrote a lot of, I include a lot, there's a whole storyline in the book about a big tour I did in 2012, because I didn't want it to be just a textbook, and I wanted to be, I want people that maybe have no desire to even be in the industry but they're interested in what we do. And so like, I wanted to kind of tell that story too. And like, what's it take to get a band around the world? And because, as someone in the industry, you get asked a lot of questions by people who aren't in the industry, who they don't want to be in it, but they want to know what's going on and what it's like. And like, what do you do when you go overseas? Like, how do you get your gear there, or how do you get there? How does the band get there? And like, what do you do when you show up and they don't speak English? You get asked a lot of questions over the years. And so by doing it for so long, we kind of forget, like at some point it becomes second nature for us, but it's not for everyone. And they're curious. So that was part of my intention with the book, is like, I want to explain to other people that have no idea what it's like, but kind of give them the opportunity to look behind the curtains, like, oh man, that's cool. Like, that's how that works. You know what I mean? So, young tour and production managers can learn and get better, but also people can be like, oh, cool. Like I've always wondered how that works. And now they know,
Beyond your accomplishments in live production, I know you also have a passion for flying, which is insane and so cool. How does that sense of freedom and adventure that you experience, presumably while you're flying, translate into your creative work? And are there any parallels between piloting and orchestrating a successful production?
Yeah. Well, I think to the freedom part of it, I mean, I was literally just journaling this morning and I wrote in there randomly, like, the fact that, I want to go flying next week and I might bring a friend or I might just go by myself. And it never, that never gets old to me. The ability to say, I might just go fly a plane by myself because, any pilot, as they're learning, like the goal is to get to that first solo, like the first time you ever fly by yourself. And that's an amazing thing. And then you get your pilot's license and you can do your first solo every time. You can fly just go do anything you want at any time. And that never gets old. And I love that aspect of it. And just the ability to be like, I want to go fly a plane today and I'm going to bounce around wherever. So, I love that aspect of it. And then I think the parallels for me specifically as a production manager is just like, flying, whether you're flying a single engine aircraft all the way up to like commercial flight, is like, it's very regimented. There's checklists for everything. And, there's checklists, there's efficiencies, etc. As a production manager, it's just like my wheelhouse. I love the checklist. I love the routine of it all. Like you get it, you use checklists and routines so you don't forget anything. So you're always safe as possible, stuff like that. And that is a direct correlation between tour and production management versus being a pilot. It's just like the routine and the structure and the like, don't break structure, like on a tour, you want to keep its routine as much as possible for many reasons, whether it's to make efficiencies in your day and keep everybody happy or whatever, and make sure nothing falls through the cracks. And, similar with being a pilot, it's like you're doing it first and foremost to make sure you're safe. So you don't forget something and nothing goes on, slips through the cracks, but also like efficiencies in fuel. Like airplane fuel is super expensive. So you want to be efficient there. And so there's so many parallels that you would think of between the two, but yeah, flying something special.
I love that. I love that. And before I let you go, I do a couple more questions. But first one being, are there any key lessons that you've learned along the way that you wish you knew when you first began?
I mean, I think just as like on a personal thing, I wish I would have documented more as far as like what venue and what city, so I could truly say how many different venues I've played / actual cities I've been to, and how many shows I've done. Like, I don't really know, probably a few thousand, but I have no idea. And honestly, like venue, like that would be cool just on a personal level. But as a professional, as a production manager, I think I wish I would have gotten into the habit earlier of, well, a few things, but I think I wish I would have gotten into the habit earlier of really trying to be professional and like, because back when I started, I was just like being an audio guy and just like having fun and, not that I wasn't taking it serious, because I absolutely was. I always have, but just to like maybe, which I guess this leads into my other thing I wish I would have known, of just like, I should have been more proactive about climbing the ladder and getting, furthering my career quicker. I was kind of just letting things ride and be like, oh, well, I'm working with these guys and it's fun and it's great. And then I would get the next year and be like, okay, well, I'm touring with this band and that's cool. And my rent's paid for the year, so I'm good. But I should have, I think I would just rather have been more proactive about trying to find gigs and climb the ladder a little quicker, because I think I would have gotten farther and further before the burnout set in, because now it's like I'm at the point that I was trying to get to for years, and I'm kind of crusty and burnt out, so I don't want to do it as much. I still love it, but I don't want to do it as much. And so I'm like,
right.
Oh, wow, you tried so hard to get here. And now I get here and I just want to chill out and stay home and ride bikes and fly airplanes.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It all tracks. And now my last question, 2 parts. What is the worst piece of advice that you've ever gotten? And of course, to land the plane on a high note, what's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten?
I think not necessarily advice, but a comment is like, after I got out of audio school, I went back home and, lived at home for 10 months. Because like, okay, because again, I'm from the Midwest and from Iowa. There wasn't a lot of anything of what I was trying to do in my hometown, let alone Iowa in general. So I had to work for it. So I went back home, kind of regroup. And I think, the not so much necessarily advice, but the comment is like, you're never going to leave. You're going to go there. You're going to go home and you're not going to do it. And slash, when I did go home, I was doing some interning, like I said, but I worked in a factory and I was just saving up money. So when I did where I was going to do next, I had money in the bank. And, people there would be like, oh yeah, you're here. You're a lifer. You're going to be here forever. And then when I did decide to leave, they're like, you'll be back. And all of that was just fuel. So I think that was terrible advice. It's just like, how uninspiring, dude. Thanks. Right. So I think that's terrible, a form of advice of don't count me out before I've tried. I can go home and then leave again. I was there when I left the first time. So I think that is pretty bad advice to give anyone of anything to discourage them. On that note, it kind of also ties into what I would consider the best piece of advice, which again, not so much advice, but a comment. And it was when I was in audio school and I took this, because we had certain non-audio related classes we had to take, like music theory and whatever. And I was taking this music business class, which was amazing. But the teacher, super hard teacher. And at the beginning, first class, whatever of that class, he was like, yeah, I don't give out many A's. I don't really, and I was just again, at first I was like, why would you say that? But then I was like, all right, challenge accepted, no A's, huh? We'll see about that. And I worked my butt off and he said it for a reason. He was a very hard teacher, but it was one of those things he was very hard for all the right reasons. He didn't want people to come in there and screw off. You're here to learn. The only way to learn is to work really hard. And so I say it's the best piece of advice because, he challenged us, in an indirect way by saying, I don't give out A's. And so that's, if you're in the right mindset, that's a challenge of okay, then I'm going to get an A. And I worked my butt off and I, because his class was hard. So you had to work extra hard to get good grades in that class. And I worked so hard, and I did get an A. And I was one of 3 people in the class who got an A. So he was right as well. He didn't give me any A's because he was so hard. But I learned, by that point I already had a pretty good study habits and stuff, but I learned to double down on study habits. I learned a lot about the music industry, the music business part of it, because that's what the class was. And I just learned that if you work really hard, you can get good results. And I think that has stuck with me forever. It's just and I think, it's why I'm a pilot. It's why I wrote a book. It's because because of people like that are that prove to you, if you work really hard, you can get what you want.
That's a good reminder. That's a good reminder for sure. I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that you've shared today. I super appreciate it. And I'm stoked for everyone to read your book. I'm excited to read your book.
Yeah, check it out. The Efficient Hustle. My website is theefficienthustle.com, which there's everything you need to know about me. And I do a lot of cool industry-related blogs and stuff like that. But, of course, there's a one page on the website dedicated to the book, which you can find it and buy it and all that.
All the things.
All the things. Yeah, but I'm very excited.
Amazing.
I'm really trying to do my part to, hopefully help a lot of people, but also make the industry a better world and a more professional place to work.
Exactly. That's what we need. So much appreciated. Luke, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Learning with Lerner and hearing the wisdom, stories, and ideas that will have you feeling inspired and ready to take on the world. If you've enjoyed this, please remember to share, rate, and review. It means the world to me and the team putting it all together. If you're looking for more information, you can find me at lindseylerner.com. That's LINDSEYLERNER.com. Or if you've got any questions or curiosity about me, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Lindsey Lerner. Thanks again for listening and have an awesome day.